individual review of my comparisons of the off-campus first season versus The Deal, the first book in the off-campus series. So I have the special edition cover. I went and reread this book so I can go and look at all of the different things that were different in the show, things that they didn't put in the show, the things they added in the show, and all that different stuff. So I wrote down notes so I can go through all of this. So I am going to be saying spoilers. So if you delve into this video, there's spoilers. So if you haven't read either The Deal or you haven't gone and checked out the show, I would suggest not watching this video. So here we go. All right. So obviously the off-campus series is based on the off-campus book series. You know, we started out with The Deal, which is the first one. So we got Garrett Graham and Hannah Wells. So here's changes I'm okay with, or things they did in the show that I was okay with. So their meet cute at the beginning was different in the book. I said they first meet in class. Garrett sees that Hannah passed their finals, so he asks her to tutor him, and she keeps telling him no. Once Garrett sees that Hannah has the hots for Justin, he tells her that he will help her get with Justin, but she has to tutor him. In the TV show, Hannah accidentally sees Garrett in the shower naked in the locker room, and then he sees her in class and sees that she got an A on her paper. Also in the show, the creator gave Hannah like 2 or 3 jobs. She said like, in the show, she had said like she had like 3 jobs, where in the book she was only like a waitress. I guess you could say like the economy obviously was cheaper 6 years ago than it is now. So it's kind of like more realistic that when someone's on a specific scholarship that you would have maybe at least a couple of jobs to kind of help supplement and stuff like that. So also, like, she has it to where she's working in Malone's in the TV show, where the book, as far as I knew, it was like, it had a certain name to it. Della's, I think it might have been called Della's, but it was like a restaurant. It was not like a bar and grill, where Malone's is more of like a bar. And they also serve like food and stuff like that. Like probably not a ton of food and stuff. It's mainly a bar. So John Logan has a sister in the TV show, where in the first book of the off-campus series, there was no mention of John Logan having a sister or like a sibling in general. So they've added a sister onto the show where, you know, like I said, in the book, at least for the first book, there was no sibling, you know, like, or anything like that. So I said in the TV show, John's sister Jules runs the Fifth Line Instagram. It's a gossip page that talks about the Briar-U hockey team and the players. So in the show, they made Sean, Allie's boyfriend, more boring. I said he definitely wasn't right for Allie. I honestly didn't see the appeal to Sean, where in the book, Sean was more of a jock and less stuck up than the Sean they created for the show. Like, there was a difference. Like in the show, I was looking at this guy like, why would he even date Allie? They seem way too different, you know? Like, she's more of a party girl. She likes to go around different places and stuff like that. She likes to, you know, she likes more of like discovering different places and all this stuff. He just wants to do his schooling and go back to Vermont where he lives and basically, like, I don't know, start a family and kids and all that stuff. He just seems like he's more of like, I wouldn't say boring, but, you know, like, he's not an adventurer. He just wants to like live in his town that he lived in and get married and have children. And she does not really like interested in that, at least not right now. Like, she wants to like sow her wild oats, basically, you know. She wants to go out and be an actress and do, you know, plays and different things like that. And, you know, that kind of can take you different places and stuff. So they really are going in different paths. So I really just didn't see the appeal with why she kept like wanting to stay with Sean, you know? And I was like, girl, this guy's not right for you, you know? Where in the book, he definitely was more like lax. He was a jock, you know? He was more of a jock and definitely more kind of like down to earth and stuff. So they really changed his character for the show, you know? And I think obviously to make it easier of her like easily dumping him and going with like Dean instead. So Justin Cole, I said in the book, Justin is a jock. He's a wide receiver on the football team and he doesn't play music. Where in the book, Hannah is dealing with a guy named Cassidy Donovan that she is singing with. And they actually did have a Cass Donovan in the cast on the show, and he did like 2 episodes. But I think he was a part of like the Drunk Shakespeare crew, I think. You know, because I'm like, he wasn't a character that you really paid attention to. You know, where in the book it was like she was working with Cassidy Donovan. He was a douchebag, you know. So I said that in the TV show, they basically combined the characters of Cassidy Donovan and Justin Cole. They turned Justin Cole into a musician who was helping Hannah with writing a song. I said also in the TV show, Justin is in a band. I said they did have a character in the show called Cass Donovan, but he wasn't involved with Hannah for singing. I said, I will say, though, that I thought Justin in the TV show was a pretentious douchebag. Like, in the book, Justin kind of came off as like absent-minded, but he was obviously more of like a football playboy, where it's like he kind of slept with girls and stuff like that. And he got to the point where he was interested in Hannah, and he did ask her out on a date, but she was like already involved with Garrett at that time. So I mean, there's, you know, she wasn't going to go on a date with Justin. But in the show, I definitely felt like Justin was a pretentious douchebag. You know, I was like, this guy's a fucking, like, he smells his own farts, you know? Like, I'm just like, oh, dude, come on. So after Hannah and Garrett practice kissing in his room, and Hannah tries to act like the kiss didn't mean anything, so she kisses Garrett's teammate to prove that his kiss didn't affect her. In the book, Hannah kisses Dean, but in the TV show, she kisses Logan, and they weren't in Garrett's room. I said in the TV show, they were in the hockey weight room. So there's like 2 different scenes right there. Like in the TV show, they were in the weight room, but in here, it was like they were in Garrett's room with the door closed, and Dean had walked in, like, you know, obviously interrupting them. I said, I actually didn't mind her kissing Logan because it adds more tension for the scene, because we all know that Logan has a crush on Hannah, where Dean was definitely not picky on who he slept with or kissed. So that kiss was definitely like nothing new to him, nothing special, you know? So also I felt like Garrett in the book was more jealous of her kissing Dean, where in the show, Garrett didn't look jealous. He just kind of like, he didn't really look like he was really affected, like maybe slightly affected by it, for the fact that, you know, she had said to him like, you know, oh, am I blushing now kind of thing after she kissed Logan and walked away. She was doing it obviously as a challenge to show him like, hey, I'm not as affected by your kiss as you claim I am, you know? So to me, I liked it better in the book, I'll say, because you could kind of see a little bit of that jealousy with Garrett. But, you know, there's like jealousy that's not a red flag or isn't toxic. Like, it's a healthy jealousy, you know? Like, you could tell, like, Garrett at that point when he was kissing, like, Hannah Wellesley in the book, he was already, like, pretty much gone for her, you know? And that was just kind of like an extra thing for him. And he was like, you know, kind of like denying the fact that he really liked her. So Dean has a birthday party with costumes and a sleepover in the TV show, where nothing like that happened in the book. Garrett and Hannah get to know each other in his room as she's tutoring him. That's happened in the book, where the more she goes to his place, you know, where he's staying at, and goes in his room to tutor him, the more they kind of like get to know each other and their likes and dislikes and things like that. Where in the show, they had it to where Dean had this birthday party, and so they're all dressing up in like these costumes and stuff, and she's dressed up as like a bunny, looked like a kind of like a Playboy bunny, and he was dressed up as like a lame vampire. Like he just was wearing like a cape. There was really nothing else to his costume, you know? Like at least with Dean, he was dressed up as like Maverick from Top Gun, and Allie was dressed up as like J-Lo, which I was like, girl, you're working that dress. She looked really good in that dress, you know? But the actress, she's fairly pretty, so she worked that dress really well. And you can see like the starting of like Dean and Allie, like their attraction, because he started like he was dancing with Allie, and she was kind of like telling him like, no, 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 you know, like not too close, because she was still dating Sean at that time. So I felt that was kind of different. I didn't mind that. I did not mind like that little, like they had a little sleepover, and Hannah and Garrett, like she didn't want to sleep in the same bed as him, but then like she ended up like talking to him more about like music and different stuff, and so they end up like congregating on the bed with her laptop, and then they end up falling asleep on the bed together. And then he went and woke up in the middle of the night, realized that he was like spooning her, and was like, oh, I should probably move to the floor again. So he moved to the floor, which I thought was very nice, you know, of him doing that. So I said there were songs that didn't make it in the show, which I can understand because pop culture 11 years ago would be different than it is now. I said in the book, Garrett states that his mother's favorite song is Tuesday's Gone by Lynyrd Skynyrd. But in the show, it's Baby Now That I Found You. And there's like few artists that have sung that song. I said also some people mentioned how One Direction wasn't talked about, but I want to mention that One Direction was talked about only once, like at the beginning, like the first episode, she's discussing with her advisor, you know, the guy who's part of the, like the music teacher. He had mentioned to her that she wrote like this essay or whatever it was on One Direction. So I'm like, it was talked about. One Direction was talked about. But you're talking about a group that was more popular in like the early 2000s or maybe like around the 2010s or so. And it's not popular anymore. So I really don't see 20-year-olds listening to One Direction. I would see more 30-year-olds, like women around my sister's age. You know, because my sister's like 12 years younger than me. So I could see women around my sister's age in their 30s still listening to One Direction because that's what they were, you know, into around that time, you know. I could see maybe like if you're a college student, maybe you would talk about like Harry Styles, who was, you know, who's obviously was in One Direction, but has a solo career now. You know, I could see maybe people talking about Harry Styles because he's more relevant today, you know, like he has music, you know, Watermelon Sugar and all this stuff, other stuff that he's done, like that are good songs, you know. So I could see maybe college kids like listening to Harry Styles or Taylor Swift, Chappell Roan, or Sabrina Carpenter. I could see people talking about them, you know, because they're more relevant, especially like Taylor Swift. People are like, there's huge Taylor Swift fans, you know, Swifties. They don't call them Swifties for a reason, for no reason. So that's what I said, like people were complaining about that, but I'm like, well, you got to look at like what's relevant today. Like you're creating a show in 2026, so you have to do songs that would be more relevant or popular today, you know, rather than something that was popular like 10 or 15 years ago, you know? So I really didn't understand, like I can understand like them wanting to mention One Direction because in the books, where it said there was like banter in the book with Hannah and Garrett when it came to her having One Direction songs on her playlist. He would tease her about having One Direction and how he decided to delete the songs off her playlist. That was like a funny like banter that they did, and I thought that was funny. But they kind of went in like another direction when it came to in the show. In the show, like she was obsessed with the with Justin Cole and like his band and everything. And so she had a playlist with his songs on it, even songs that he like did like years ago, like his solo career and stuff. And so she was embarrassed because he had saw it. Justin Cole had actually saw it. And so she was like, ooh. And so she kind of like almost wanted to delete it. So there was kind of like that was talked about. Otherwise, there really wasn't like, they really didn't discuss like One Direction, which like I said, I can understand because One Direction isn't really a band that's kind of like relevant nowadays. Like that type of thing. Like I don't see 20-year-olds listening to like maybe like New Kids on the Block. I mean, New Kids on the Block really isn't like relevant for 20-year-olds. It'd be relevant for like my age because I was a preteen when I listened to New Kids on the Block or, you know, anything like that, you know, or like the 90s you were listening to like maybe NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, you know. So there was that. I said, after Hannah tells Garrett about her sexual assault that happened to her and how she feels like she's broken and she wants him to give her an orgasm, in the show, he ends up talking to Dean about advice on how to go forward, where in the book, he had talked to the senior hockey player on their team, Birdie, which, you know, obviously is like a nickname for him. And I was like, you know, either way, I thought it was fine. Like whether he talked to Dean or he talked to Birdie, it didn't really matter because it's like, obviously Dean, you know, has a lot of experience with, you know, women and everything like that. But I would say like I didn't mind like him talking with Dean because Dean was like, you know, it's all about obviously consent and her being relaxed and everything like that. And that is so true. That is so true because sex for women is definitely more mental. So it's like if we're really not like mentally there, we're not like enjoying it, you know? Where men, it's definitely more physical, you know? So I'm like, it really didn't bother me whether it was him talking with Birdie in the book or him talking with Dean in the TV show. I like Dean. I think he's a great character. So during the scene of Hannah and Garrett's first sexual encounter of them, like where he's trying to get her to an orgasm, but she's like really kind of like, she's starting to like freeze up and kind of put herself back into like, you know, survival mode. And so he's telling her like, hey, let's try this instead, where he's like, how about you pleasure yourself and I'll pleasure myself and we can kind of go from there. And in the book, it definitely was a little longer, where on the show, once they kind of got naked and they were looking at each other, she orgasmed like fairly quickly. And I was like, ooh, that's too quick. Especially because it's like, she was still nervous. And usually like when you're nervous, it kind of could take you a little while to kind of like get there, you know, get your cookies. So I felt like it was a little too quickly. I'm glad it wasn't like super gratuitous because I really did not want it to be like that. But it felt kind of cringy, you know, like with her like doing it. And like I said, it felt like way too quickly, like that she had got there. Like I could see maybe him getting there quick because, you know, guys are usually kind of like easy to get there. Where with women, it can, like I said, it could take a while, you know, especially if you're not relaxed, you know. So I felt like it was a little too quick in the show. You know, like I could see maybe why they didn't want to linger in that because, you know, sex can, you know, especially with the amount of time that is for that scene, it could make things more like NC-17 type of thing, you know. Obviously, I can't remember if this show is like PG-13 or if it is R. I would see it should be probably R. If that's it should definitely be restricted because there's enough sex stuff going on. It should not be like, I would say this should not be recommended for like teenagers. This is definitely should be like 18 and over, you know, watching show for sure. Like even the book series, someone had said like they were putting the off-campus series as YA, and I was like, no. The off-campus series is not YA. It is not young adult. Young adult is supposed to be like 12 to 17. That's what they classify it in for US marketing.
YA is 12 to 17. It is not YA. This is what you would call new adult, which is college age. Anything that's like 18 to 25, around there. That's probably the most marketable that you would put for that age range. 18 to 25, these would be the people who would be reading these books and watching the show, you know, around college age, because it's supposed to be taking place in college. So, you know. So for me, I'm like, yeah, YA? No. I think there was some articles that were being written where they were saying like, this is YA, and I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Sorry. No, it isn't. So the next, I really wish they would have did for the show, but they didn't. In the book, Halloween comes along, and Garrett hates the holiday. So instead of going to a party, Hannah decides to hang out with Garrett instead. She talks to him more about her like sexual assault and things that her and her family had dealt with in the town and everything, and the hell her family went through. And so he confides in her that he has bad memories from the holiday because that's when his father first like physically hit him, was on Halloween. He had got home from like going trick-or-treating with his friends, and something set his dad off and he hit him. And this was maybe like a year after his mother died of cancer. And so not only did the father no longer have his punching bag anymore from his wife, you know, now he's like, oh, I'm going to go to my kid and start hitting him, you know? So that scene definitely was more emotional, and there was more intimacy in that scene in the book. And I really wish they would have added that into the show, was that intimacy, because that's where, you know, Garrett and Wellesley, you know, Hannah first had sex, is that they confided in each other more on Halloween, and like her trying to cheer him up and make him feel better, and have him have good memories of Halloween and not bad memories. So I said, where in the show, Hannah realizes that she really wanted to date Garrett instead of Justin. So she finds Garrett at the hockey rink and she serenades him with Baby Now That I Found You. And like I said, that was not during Halloween time, you know? So that after they say that they want to actually date, they head back over to his place and have sex. Again, I would have preferred if they would have had that Halloween scene because it made it more emotional. I really wish that they didn't cheapen the intimacy that we got in the book. In the show, there was more of a sexual montage of them having sex. I said the scenes were still enjoyable, but I really wanted more intimacy when it came to Garrett and Hannah finally culminating, you know, into that intimacy of having sex and everything, and also her enjoying it, being there in that moment, you know? So I really wish they would have pushed for more intimacy, because there's difference between intimacy and sex, you know? So I really wish there was more there, and that's why, like, to me, like, the book is better with adding more of that intimacy. 'Cause he basically, when they started doing more sexy stuff, he told her like baby steps, like let's kind of like get there, you know, let's not go straight into sex, because, you know, he's like, I know you're still like not trusting me fully, and we need to get to that trust, we need to get to that connection. And so they did some other things, like other foreplay, before they got to them finally having sex. So like I said, I really wanted that Halloween to be there, and it wasn't in the show. And I was like, no. They did a Christmas time thing, but they did not do Halloween. And I'm like, where the fuck is Halloween? You know, like, that was not there. Another thing that I wanted to mention that I wasn't really a big fan of was the fact that I did feel like the creator of the show decided to lessen the overall impact of the control that Garrett's father had. I had no problem with the actor because I do like him, but I did feel like they toned down the bullying, manipulation, and control that Phil Graham had over Garrett. I say you could feel in the book how Garrett still felt scared of his father, and I did feel like him being around Hannah gave him that courage to not allow Phil to continue to have that control over him. Where in the show, it almost seemed like the father had some regrets of his past, and he was trying to have a better relationship with his son. I felt like they were trying to make Phil Graham more sympathetic to the audience, and that is something that I do not want to see when it comes to domestic abusers. I said they did show flashbacks of Garrett being a child watching his father abuse his mother, but to me, I felt like they really didn't show how evil Phil Graham really was. I said also in the book with Cindy, that is Phil Graham's girlfriend, she eventually leaves Phil in the book. In the book, she eventually leaves him. But towards the end of the TV show, it still showed Cindy with Phil at Garrett's hockey game. So Phil Graham was a monster. It was him controlling every aspect of his perfect image, being this legendary athlete, and so he needed to have that perfect son and perfect wife. He didn't give a shit what Garrett's thoughts were. If he tells you to do something, then you do it, no questions asked. And that's basically how Phil Graham was. And like I said, I felt like in the show, they toned him down to make him less of a monster. And it's like, we don't do that. We don't tone down a serial killer. No, we show everything that serial killer did. We don't want to romanticize serial killers or abusers. And I did feel like they toned it down. You need to show how that guy is a fucking monster. So, I had said your parents are heroes when you are young, and as you age, you realize that your parents are not infallible. They're not perfect. So Garrett definitely needed therapy, especially because of the witnessing of the abuse to his mother and then having that abuse from his father. Because in the books, Garrett had mentioned to Hannah that the abuse happened like within about 4 or 5 years, and then he finally got big enough to where he could push back. He can go and defend himself. So still, within those 4 or 5 years, that puts a lot of psychological abuse on you, because bones can heal. Scars can fade away. Bruises heal. But what he did psychologically to Graham, that stays around a lot longer. And so, for me, I really, really wanted them to give the actor more range to be more of that bastard that Phil was. I really wanted that in the show, and they definitely toned his character down. And I was like, we should have did more. We should have did more here. When Thanksgiving ended in disaster and Garrett and Hannah stopped on the side of the road, in the book, they end up having sex. But in the show, that didn't happen. I said they also said they loved each other in the car in the book, where in the car, they did not say that. That didn't happen. I said I did like the Friendsgiving in the show and the explosion of the deep fried turkey. That was funny. That was funny. But I did like that Friendsgiving of like anybody who wasn't going home. They would have a Thanksgiving at the where Tucker and Dean and all this stuff are staying. I thought that was funny. And I liked Tucker's character where he was like asking his mom, like, like asking her like how to do this and do that and stuff, and him talking to his mom. I thought that was really sweet that he was getting advice from his mom. So like that part of the Thanksgiving was really fun and cute, seeing that. And then of course we end up seeing in the show that Dean and Allie have been kind of like secretly having sex with each other, In the show, Hannah finds out that Phil abused Garrett and his mother around Thanksgiving time, where in the book Hannah already knew because Garrett obviously confessed at Halloween time. That's why I said Halloween, that was an important thing. That was an important part of the book that I really wish they would, because he confided her then. you know? So it shows in the book that Hannah already knew she was entering the lion's den, you know, at Thanksgiving. She already knew who this fucker was and was willing to do it because she wanted to be the emotional support for Garrett, you know? And like I said, there was that emotional impact at Halloween time. So it didn't have that. So she's going in not knowing fully how Phil Graham is, you know? And also, like in the book, Hannah is talking with Cindy in the kitchen, and Hannah's the one that notices the bruises on Cindy, you know? And then Garrett sees it in the book that they see it, and he's like, I can't stay here. I need to leave. And then he tells Cindy, like both in the show and in the book, he tells Cindy, he's not going to get better. He's going to get worse. He did it to my mother. He did it to me. He will continue to do it to you. You need to leave. It's better that you leave. And like I said, in the book, Cindy finally has that courage to leave, you know, to leave Phil, which is like good for her. You know, she finally had that courage to leave. In the show, she was still with that fucker. She was still with him. And I was like, oh, girl, get out of it. Get out of it. Get out of it. So I said, another thing I liked in the TV show was in the book, Hannah recognizes Aaron's friend. Aaron is the guy that sexually assaulted Hannah in high school. Aaron's friend is named Rob Delaney, who testified against Hannah and said that she lied about Aaron sexually assaulting her. So Garrett goes after Rob Delaney and beats him up for lying. But in the TV show, they have Delaney be her sexual assailant. So Garrett beats up her actual abuser in the TV show. And there is where my bloodthirsty was, where I was like, beat his ass. Beat him. Beat him. I wanted the beating to be longer. I really did. I wanted to go onto that ice and be like, I'll hold this fucker down while you keep going, bro. Keep going. And that I was like, oh, I say I liked better than how it was in the book. In the book, he was going after the friend. He was going after the friend because we don't see the sexual assaulter. We know this asshole still lives in Indiana. He's still there, you know. So in the show, I was like, yes, beat his ass. Beat him. All those guys that are the hockey players, you just tell him what he is. Tell him he's a scumbag, you know. He's an opportunistic rapist, you know, because he drugged her. He drugged her. He's a fucking coward. So for me, I was like, hold him down. Let's wail on him. I wanted it to be longer. Yeah, my bloodthirsty was up high on that one where I was like, hold him down. I will do it for you. Yeah, so that to me I liked better in the show is that he actually attacked the abuser. I was like, yes, get him. So also after the breakup, Hannah calls her mom in the show. And I loved how her mother's pep talk, you know, of telling her that it wasn't her fault. I said, none of this was her fault. And I liked that scene. That had more emotion to it than what was in the books. In the books, you could tell like her parents were definitely like stressed and they dealt with a lot of crap, you know, a lot of crap. And so I think I liked it better in the show because her mother was like, you know, how is this your fault? This wasn't your fault. You went to a party. You had a drink. You got drugged. This person took advantage of you. It wasn't your fault. And I liked that she kept talking to her daughter, telling her daughter, it wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault. You know, which it wasn't. It wasn't her fault. So I appreciated that. So the things I wasn't a fan of, I said Allie is a part of Drunk Shakespeare. So Hannah, Garrett, and Justin are in the audience and they become part of the play. In the book, there was no Drunk Shakespeare. So I didn't understand why this was put in place where they could have added something that actually was in the book. Like they added something that wasn't in the book. And I was like, why did they do this? They could have added that Halloween scene in instead. Instead, they go and do Drunk Shakespeare. And I was like, why? Why do we need this? Like, you didn't really need to show what Allie was doing in school. It's like, they could have added that into like the third season. Like, if they're going to do Dean and Allie for the third season, which I'm not sure if they are, who knows? The way they ended it, it made it look more of like there would be stuff going on for like Dean and Allie, but I don't know. Because the second book is about John Logan, and I believe the character's name, I think her name's Olivia, I think. I wasn't a fan of that book, but I need to reread it again. I do need to reread it again, just to refresh myself on it again. But I was like, why? Why did we need to have this whole thing when you could have added in that Halloween scene and had more intimacy with Garrett and Hannah? And I was like, come on, you know? So towards the end of the first season, we see Allie hook up with Dean shortly after she breaks up with her boyfriend, Sean. I didn't have a problem with them hooking up because that's what happened in book 3 called The Score, but I didn't understand why they already introduced their relationship in the first season when really the whole season should have been just Hannah and Garrett's relationship. I felt like the Allie and Dean storyline took away from Hannah and Garrett's love story. I said, now I can understand if they felt like Dean and Allie's story was more interesting than Logan's story in the second book, The Mistake. But Allie and Dean's story would have made more sense if it was teased toward the end of season 1. Like, if they're like, oh, well, we like Allie and Dean better, we can have them for the second season. Then you could have teased it at the end where you're like, oh, is there something happening between Dean and Allie? Okay. And then it kind of you look forward to like the second season, right? This one here, they have it to where it's like they're already hooking up. They've already hooked up how many times? And she keeps telling him this is the last time, you know, and then they do it again. And I was like, well, what the F are they going to do for when they do the next season? Like, okay, is it going to be John Logan? Because they really barely teased. I think they might have introduced his love interest in the first season. If she was introduced, I don't remember her character. I don't remember her. You know, she was so quick. They're there and gone, you know? So I really was like, why? Why did we need Allie and Dean? I mean, I like them. I do. But why not for their season, you know? I felt like Graham and Garrett and Hannah were kind of like cheapened out, you know, like there could have been more intimacy. So I said also, though, another thing that annoyed me in the TV show was that Allie decides to sleep with Hunter Davenport. Now he goes by a different name than Hunter Davenport, where in the book she never did that. Allie never hooked up with that Hunter Davenport in the books. I said it made TV show Allie look more like a skank. It did. It made her look more like a skank. So even though her and Dean weren't dating, they definitely were connecting on a deeper level. So it caused a rift now for the team because Hunter is now on the Briar U hockey team. Also, this is just an observation, but I don't like the actor who plays Hunter Davenport. He seemed like such a wet mop. I said, he's a good-looking guy, but he came off as more feminine to me than masculine. I said, I didn't understand why Allie would go for the dude in the first place, especially because it's like, she's boning Dean. Dean is a man. Dean is masculine. Where Hunter Davenport, the actor who plays Hunter Davenport, it was like, he gave off like very like kind of feminine energy. And I was like, I am not thinking that this dude's into girls. I'm thinking he's into guys, you know? And that's what he gave me. This guy gave me more feminine energy than masculine. And that's why I was like, she's going to go for this guy? Really? And she sleeps with him? Ugh. I really was not into that at all, like her conversing with Hunter Davenport. And then also like hanging out with Beau's sister, you know? Like I was just like, why? I was like, I'm like, did that happen in the third book where she's hanging out with his sister? Because I'm like, I don't know if that happened. Because I'm pretty sure Beau's character dies in the book series. Like if you haven't read the book series, that's what happens, is that Beau ends up, I believe he got killed in a car accident because Beau and Dean are like best friends. They're like really close together. And Dean ends up like having like, he like loses it a little bit because, you know, he lost his friend, you know? And so I believe that's what it was in the third book, if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since I read the score and I do want to reread that one again. But obviously I want to read the mistake first before I delve into the score again. So I really was like, I didn't see the appeal. I didn't see the chemistry between her and that Hunter Davenport guy. Like I said, that guy came off as like such a wet mop to me. And I was just like, really? Really? Okay. When you could have Dean, who does all the freaky shit you want him to do. He does all the stuff. This guy here seems like a prude, you know? He seems like a prude. And I just was like, I don't like this guy. He comes off as like really like a weenie. Like I could break that man. I could break him. You know, honestly, no. As also towards the end of the book, Hannah had broken up with Garrett because Garrett's father was threatening her with the fact that he could pull Garrett's funding for hockey. Where in the TV show, they had Garrett break up with Hannah because he didn't want to be his father. And I felt like he was trying to protect Hannah from himself. I said, oh, now I understand the reasoning of why they changed it, but still in the book, Garrett and Hannah were only broken up for about a month when Garrett finally gets the confession from Hannah that it was his father that was the cause of the breakup. Because once he tells her that his father has no control over his finances once Garrett turns 21 in January. So it was like, if she would have like not broken up with him, his inheritance would have came from his grandparents. Like his grandparents had set up an inheritance for him that his father had no idea about. And so I was like, well, he had money coming in. So to me, I felt like they really didn't need to change it. Now I understand why they said they changed it, because nowadays college athletes can get sponsorships and stuff. So I understand that, you know, this is the whole reason of why they had the liquid IV and all that stuff in the show and everything like that. And there was no liquid IV in the books because that product didn't exist. As far as I know, that product did not exist in 2015. So I understand kind of rules have kind of changed since then, but still it's like Hannah didn't need to know that. Hannah could have been like, you know, oblivious to all that stuff, you know? And the way that his father was, the way Phil was, he's scary. You know, that guy is very intimidating and scary, and that he could intimidate Hannah, you know? So I felt like that could have still been done. Like the way they had it to where she broke up with him, I felt like it still could have been done in the book rather than how they did it for the TV show and everything. So those are like the changes. Like I said, some of them I was okay with, and some of them I was like, I really wish they would have did a little bit better. I still ended up giving this show, at least for the first season, I still ended up giving the show like an 8 out of 10. I still enjoyed myself, even though there were changes that I really wish that they would have did on the book, especially, like I said, that Halloween scene, that Halloween part of the book, I really wanted in the show, that show more of that intimacy. I really wanted it, and it wasn't there. So I felt like it kind of cheapened their relationship. And also, why 8 episodes? Why not 10? I didn't understand why there was only 8 episodes to the season, you know? It's like, did Amazon Studios, like, they were really like, hey, no, just do 8? Is that what it is? Because they honestly could have did 10. They could have did 10. They could have added in more with Garrett and Hannah. So that's kind of like my thoughts on it. I still think 99.99% of the time, the book is usually always better than the movie or TV show. But I felt like at least with the TV show, they could have extended, you know, and put more stuff into it because of the book, you know? Like when they did Lord of the Rings and all that stuff, those movies were like 3 hours long, you know? So it's like with this, it's like they could have extended it to like 10 episodes, you know? 10 episodes and had it to where they added that Halloween scene in here that was really you know, for their intimacy. They could have did that, you know? And like I said, I didn't understand Allie sleeping with Hunter Davenport. And I was like, really? To me, it was like just added drama they wanted to put in the show, which I can understand, you know, drama, you know, it sells. But I really, really think they could have did a little bit more to make it a little better, you know? But yeah, anyways, I still enjoyed it, still gave it like an 8 out of 10. And I did rewatch it right before I started making this video. I did rewatch the season again just to make sure there wasn't like anything else that I'm missing. And there was, obviously there's some other stuff that was in the book, but it wasn't as important, you know, wasn't as important for the story and everything like that. So yeah, but let me know, did you like this show? Did you like the first season? What'd you think about it? Are there changes that in the show that they did that you really wish that they didn't do? Or are there things that you really wish that they did? Let me know in the comment section. And have you enjoyed the off-campus series books? You know, let me know. Do you have a favorite book? For me, I like The Deal and The Score the best. Those are my favorite ones. But yeah, let me know down below in the comment section. But yeah, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I'll see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.